I actually quite like the story of how I came up with this one. So if you don't like stories, you can skip to the next timestamp. I have a patient who is a personal trainer who came to see me with one messed up right shoulder, too much sportsing, too much surgery, too much cortisone, and just such limited range of motion, which is a pain in the ass when you like lifting heavy things and sort of do that for a job. We checked range of motion at the end of that first session, and from his wide-eyed response to the changes, it was apparent that cogs were turning, trying to make sense of what had happened from what we did, and that was 5 years ago. He's seen me basically every 3 weeks since, because when you do too much rugby, you will end up with problems everywhere, and pins and screws, and yeah. So when he arrived this week and wanted to talk about his right shoulder again, man, that was a moment, because the laundry list of other complaints had been ticked off. And there's been some bad points this year alone, with the other shoulder getting all crazy and searing pain down the back of one leg. So to be through that, and now it's pretty much just the shoulder, was quite something. He was one of the first people I showed that kneeling hip sway movement to, that I still really need a better name for. And I was bold enough to say to him at the time that I reckon if there was one thing that was going to fix all the leg nonsense, it was that one, even though all the drama was sacral distribution. And it did. Maybe it's not perfect, but the difference is pretty dazzling and sort of hard to explain and comprehend, but whatever that movement does, it works. So we're working on the shoulder and get some great changes. And then as he's leaving, I say, do you know what? I reckon sometime in the next few months, some shoulder version of that hip movement is going to drop out of the ether. I'll let you know when that happens. He left my last appointment of the day. I walked out to the back door to a table where I'd moved a portable induction element to make some stock, which is so great. You don't have to run an extractor for 6 hours and end up with a house that smells like stock despite the fan. And I'm standing there and checking on that, and I turned to look at the garden, put my elbow up against the doorway there and sort of dropped my hip and went, oh, hello, that's something. And I fiddled with it for a minute and just couldn't believe the sequence of events that led to that. I swapped sides and wiggled around the other way, and man, I must say, my shoulders felt fantastic. And they still do 3 days later. So this is a movement that is great for necky, shouldery, backy problems, pain and restriction of the shoulder joint and the shoulder girdle. I've yet to try it with anyone who actually has a recent or acute injury, because I only came up with it 3 days ago. So I think the caution there would be, if you can't put your arm somewhat comfortably into this position, probably don't do it. What I mean by somewhat comfortably, well, I suppose if it's kind of niggly, give it a go. If it's awful, especially if there's intense, sharp or burning pain, then don't. There are much more productive things you could probably be doing. If it's a shoulder issue that heaps of people have had a play with and it's just plateaued, then yeah, it's likely this is going to do something. As I mentioned previously, if you take nerves into too much tension or move them too quickly, you will make them cranky, so go gently, go slowly, and be aware that sometimes the results of challenging neurodynamic movements and playing with neural tension is new pain, as you find out about other cranky nerves, which were likely always an issue, but you'd just not moved far enough to find them. Required equipment for this one is a door frame or other similar stable upright structure. And bring your hand in behind your neck, in behind your head, so that you don't have to use a whole lot of muscles around the back of your shoulder to draw that shoulder out to the side, which would limit a whole lot of the rest of the helpful movement here. You're going to step forward and just bring that elbow up against the door frame, so you're not pushing into a heap of tension around the front of the shoulder at all. You're just using that stability of the structure to hold that shoulder in position and be able to relax the muscles around the back. From here, I'm going to soften down into both knees and take my hips all the way one side, all the way the other side. So going away from my elbow and towards my elbow. If you can, take your head in the same direction as your hips. So head and hips away, head and hips towards. It does seem like that movement gets pretty crazy for some people and they just can't coordinate it somehow. If it's too tricky, try some rotation. That brings tension into the spinal cord a little differently to lateral flexion, but it doesn't actually matter then which way you're turning your head. You could try turning it the same side, you could try turning it the other side, or if your neck's cranky about this, just leave the neck movement out. I really think the movement of the torso is doing the majority of it. It's just quite nice to be able to bring in a little more tension from further up the spinal cord to have a really good effect on the whole of the lateral rami of the intercostal nerves and the intercostal brachial nerve. Have your shoulders wiggle around beforehand, try again afterwards. My shoulders feel pretty fantastic.